You can't experience your own death, but you've already died infinite times. Both are true. The math proves it, and the reason why will rewrite what you means. You've heard the universe splits every time a quantum event happens. Fascinating claim. But let's be precise. What physically happens when one world becomes two? Not the poetry of it, the mechanics. And here's the question no one asks. If the universe branches at every quantum event, and quantum events happen constantly, trillions per second in your body alone, then what happened to all the versions of you that made different choices? Or worse, what happened to the versions that didn't survive? Let me be more precise. Every second, roughly 10 to the power of 500 quantum events occur across the atoms in your body. Each one a moment where reality could go multiple ways. Each one a fork. If we take quantum mechanics seriously, and we must because it's the most experimentally verified theory in physics, then every fork produces actual branches, not metaphorical ones, actual physical branches of reality. By the end of this, you'll see why crossing a street is not what you think it is. Let's start simple. With one atom, take a single atom of uranium-238, sitting in front of you, perfectly still. The question, when will it decay? When will it spit out radiation and transform into thorium? Science gives you an answer. We don't know. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is deeper. Nature itself doesn't know. This isn't ignorance on our part. It's not that we lack information about some hidden clockwork inside the atom ticking toward decay. There is no hidden clockwork. The atom doesn't decide when to decay based on some internal state we can't see. Quantum mechanics is clear on this. The moment of decay is fundamentally irreducibly random. Not random because we're missing data. Random because randomness is woven into the fabric of how matter behaves. Here's what that means. Before the atom decays, it exists in what we call a superposition, a word that sounds mystical, but just means the atom is in both states at once. Decayed and not decayed. Not we don't know which, but both. Simultaneously, the math describes both possibilities as equally real, happening in parallel, until something forces reality to show you one outcome. That something is measurement. Place a Geiger counter next to the atom. Wait. Then you hear it. Click, or you don't. Let's say you do. The click tells you the atom decayed. You write it down. Decay occurred at 3:47 p.m. But here's what's strange. The click didn't reveal which outcome happened. The click didn't peek behind a curtain to see what the atom secretly chose a moment before. The click is what forced the atom into one state. Before the measurement, both outcomes were real. Both unfolding, both happening. The Geiger counter clicking is the moment your experience collapsed into one branch of reality. No, wait, that's not quite right. Let me be more careful. The universe didn't collapse. You did, or rather, you branched. This was Hugh Everett's realization in 1957, and it solved a problem that had tortured physicists for decades. The problem was this. If an atom exists in both states before measurement, and measurement forces it into one state, then what happens to the other state? Where does it go? Everett's answer, nowhere. It's still there. Both outcomes happen. The atom decays and doesn't decay. The Geiger counter clicks and stays silent. You hear the click and you don't hear it. But you, the version of you reading this now, only experience one outcome, because you split with the measurement. One version of you experiences the click, another version, just as real, experiences silence. Both are you. Both continue forward, unaware of the other, each experiencing a perfectly consistent timeline. The universe doesn't pay. It keeps both. Think about that. Not the universe contains both possibilities. The universe executes both. Fully. Completely. Two versions of reality, both proceeding forward, both equally real. And you, the observer, divide along with it. This isn't a guess. This is what the math of quantum mechanics describes. If you refuse to add extra assumptions about collapse that aren't in the equations, one world becomes two. Not metaphorically, physically. Two branches of reality. identical except for one quantum outcome. And in each branch, a version of you continues, holding one piece of the story, unaware of the split. Branching isn't the universe splitting, it's you splitting. Now here's where it becomes unavoidable. That was one atom, one quantum event, one branch. But you're not made of one atom. You're made of roughly 7 times 10 to the 27 atoms. And every single one of them is doing quantum things constantly. Electrons hopping between energy states, molecules colliding and rebounding, particles appearing and vanishing in the spaces between your cells. Every instant, trillions of quantum events cascade through your body. And if one uranium atom branches reality, then so does every single one of those events. Every quantum fluctuation and every neuron firing in your brain, every photon striking your retina, every molecular collision in the air around you, each one a fork, each one producing branches. Do you see the problem? Or rather, do you see what this means? You aren't experiencing one timeline. You're the leading edge of an explosion of timelines. Let me give you the number. Physicists estimate roughly 10 to the power of 500 quantum events occur across your body every second. Not 10,000, not a million. 10 with 500 zeros after it. Each one a branching point. Each one splitting you into versions that experience different outcomes. Every microsecond you become countless versions, each experiencing one coherent sequence of events, each convinced they're following a single thread through time. Think of a dandelion gone to seed. One flower becomes thousands of white tufts, each carrying the same genetic information, each launched into the air by one gust of wind. They scatter. Some land in fertile soil, others hit pavement. Some travel miles, others drop immediately. Each seed follows its own trajectory, lands in its own spot, unaware of the 1,000 other seeds that began from the same stem. You're the dandelion, every instant scattering into branches. But here's what makes this deeply strange. Most of those branches, most of those versions of you scattering through possibility space don't survive very long. Let me show you what I mean. You're crossing a street, simple action. You've done it 10,000 times. Your foot leaves the curb. A car approaches from your left. The driver's eyes are on the road. Their foot hovers over the brake. Everything proceeds normally. But zoom in, into the driver's brain, into the neurons firing as their eyes track your movement, into the individual molecules, the potassium ions, the sodium gates, the quantum events that determine whether a neuron fires or doesn't fire. In one branch, a quantum fluctuation causes a neuron to misfire. A muscle in the driver's leg twitches. Their foot slips on the pedal, not by much. 2 millimeters, but 2 millimeters at 40 miles per hour over the span of 1 second means the car arrives at the crosswalk 18 inches further forward than it would have otherwise. In some branches, that's enough. The car swerves into the crosswalk. Into the space you occupy, the impact happens at the level of cells and bones and organs, but it began at the level of quantum uncertainty in a single neuron. In other branches, most branches, the fluctuation doesn't occur. Or it occurs but doesn't propagate. Or it propagates, but the driver corrects. The car passes behind you. You reach the other side. You continue your day, unaware that anything unusual almost happened. You experience one of these outcomes. Just one. The version of you reading this now exists in a branch where you made it across. But the other branches are equally real, and in countless branches, you didn't make it. The impact happened. The timeline of you ended there, on that crosswalk, because of a quantum coin flip in someone else's brain. This should sound like science fiction. It's just quantum mechanics taken seriously. Max Tegmark, physicist at MIT, actually calculated the numbers for this. Not for street crossings specifically, but for what he called quantum suicide. The probability that you, personally, survive any given moment is overwhelmingly high. The chances of a quantum fluctuation causing a fatal aneurysm in your brain right now, vanishingly small. Maybe 1 in 10 to the power of 30. But vanishingly small isn't 0, and across trillions of quantum events per second, across billions of people, across every moment since you were born, the number of branches where you died from quantum bad luck is staggering. You don't experience those branches. You're not there to experience them, but they exist. They're as real as this one. They're just missing you. Now let's make this concrete, because there's a thought experiment, disturbing, precise, that shows exactly what this means. Imagine a scientist. She builds a device. It's simple, really. A small piece of radioactive material. Let's say one atom that has a 50-50 chance of decaying in the next second. Next to it, a detector. When the detector registers decay, it sends a signal. The signal triggers a mechanism. The mechanism fires a gun pointed at the scientist's head. If the atom decays, she dies. If it doesn't, she lives. Pure quantum chance. 50-50. She presses the button. 1 second passes. From an outside observer's perspective, what happens is clear. The universe branches. In one branch, the atom decays, the gun fires, the scientist dies. In the other branch, the atom doesn't decay, the scientist survives. Both outcomes happen. Both branches proceed forward. But now ask a different question. From the scientist's subjective experience, from the inside, from the first-person perspective of consciousness, what happens? She presses the button. 1 second passes. She's alive. She presses it again. Alive, again. Alive, again, alive, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, every single time. From her perspective, she survives. The gun never fires, not once. Wait, this isn't about luck. Luck implies one outcome was chosen, and she happened to get the good one repeatedly. Nothing was chosen. Every outcome happened. The gun did fire in half the branches. Those versions of her died instantly. Their timelines ended. No more experience. No more subjective continuity. But she's not experiencing those branches. She can't. There's no her there to experience anything. Her consciousness only continues in the branches where survival occurred. And from the inside, from the perspective of lived experience, it feels like the gun never fires. Because the moment it fires, the subjective thread ends. Only the survival branches carry forward the stream of consciousness that thinks, I'm still here. She experiences an impossible winning streak. Not because the universe is favoring her, because experience only flows through branches where experience remains possible. Do you feel what just happened? So far, I've shown you the mathematics, the branching, the splitting, the parallel outcomes unfolding in superposition. Now comes the part that changes what you means, because you are that scientist. Not hypothetically. Actually, right now. Every moment of your life is a quantum trigger being pulled. Not with a gun, but with the atoms in your body, the neurons in your brain, the cosmic rays passing through your cells. Every instant, trillions of quantum events that could cascade into catastrophic failure. A molecule misfolds in exactly the wrong way. A quantum fluctuation triggers a cascade in your heart tissue. A cosmic ray flips a bit in a critical cell and starts a tumor that kills you in 3 months. In most branches, these things don't happen. The fluctuation occurs but doesn't propagate. The molecule misfolds but gets corrected. The cosmic ray passes through harmlessly. But in some branches, rare branches, improbable branches, the catastrophe unfolds. The aneurysm ruptures. The heart stops. The neuron fires wrong and you step into traffic instead of away from it. Those versions of you die. Their experience ends. The timeline stops. You're not in those branches. You're here, reading this, breathing, thinking. Your consciousness continues because you're in a branch where continuation was possible. Think of a river approaching a field of rocks. The water doesn't choose a path. It takes every path. It splits around every obstacle, each stream flowing forward through whatever gaps exist, completely unaware of the other streams branching away. Each stream experiences only its own trajectory. The rocks it flows past, the course it carves, oblivious to the fact that it's one thread of a river that divided. You are one stream. Your consciousness is the continuity of experience flowing through branches where experience continues. Not because you were lucky, because the stream only flows where flowing is possible. You woke up this morning. You ate breakfast. You crossed streets, walked downstairs, breathed air into lungs that didn't collapse, pumped blood through arteries that didn't burst. You made it to now, to this sentence. Every version of you that died yesterday from a quantum aneurysm, from a probabilistic cascade in the wrong neuron, from a cosmic ray striking DNA in exactly the wrong spot, those versions experienced nothing after that moment. Their timelines ended. Full stop. No continuation. No next thought. You are only here because you're on a branch where survival happened. You didn't survive yesterday. A version of you did in this branch. Strange. Very strange. But true. This means your entire experience, every memory, every moment of perceived continuity from birth until now, exist only because you're experiencing the improbable branch where nothing has killed you yet. Not because you were chosen, not because you were protected, not because of skill or caution or fate. Because consciousness only continues where continuation was possible. And in the quantum multiverse, that's only some branches. Think about every dangerous moment you've lived through, every time you've been sick and recovered, every near miss in traffic, every close call you dismissed as luck. In countless branches, those weren't close calls. You got hit. The illness didn't resolve. The cells turned cancerous. The misstep on the stairs broke your neck instead of just jarring your ankle. In those branches, you died. You're just not in those branches to know it. From your subjective perspective, the only perspective you have access to, you have an unbroken thread of experience stretching back to your earliest memory. It feels continuous. It feels singular. It feels like you navigated one timeline and made it through. But that's not what happened. What happened is you branched constantly, died constantly in other branches, and your subjective experience simply flowed through the narrow subset of branches where the next moment of consciousness arrived. Here's the disturbing part, the part most explanations won't tell you. From your subjective viewpoint, you will never experience death. Not because you're immortal. You're not. Versions of you are dying right now, in branches splitting away from this instant. But you will never experience the moment of your own death. Because the moment death occurs, subjective experience ends in that branch. There's no you left to experience anything. No next thought. No sensation of absence. Just nothing. The thread stops. Your consciousness only continues in branches where you remain conscious, which means from the inside, from the first-person perspective, that is the only perspective you'll ever have, every dangerous moment will resolve in your favor. Not because danger isn't real, but because the moment is not in your favor. There's no longer a you experiencing that timeline. Death is something that happens to your branches, never to your experience. If this feels like a trick, you're feeling it correctly. It's not a trick. It's a corner reality backs you into when you take quantum mechanics seriously and refuse to add magical collapse mechanisms that aren't in the mathematics. Let me be precise about what this doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you're safe. It doesn't mean you can jump off a building and expect to survive. From the outside, from the perspective of everyone else in this branch, you absolutely can die. You do die. In fact, they will watch you die because their consciousness continues in branches where your body stops functioning. But you, your subjective thread of experience, will never be there for that moment. You only experience the branches where your brain keeps generating consciousness. And those branches, by definition, are the ones where you survived the last instant. Remember that moment crossing the street I mentioned at the start? The car approaching. Your foot leaving the curb. You did get hit in some branches. The quantum fluctuation happened. The driver's neuron misfired. The car swerved 2 feet further forward. Impact. Death. But you're not experiencing that branch. You're experiencing this one. The one where the car passed behind you, where the neurons fired correctly, where the quantum dice landed such that you made it across. You've been crossing streets your entire life, thousands of crossings, and in countless branches scattered across the multiverse like seeds from that dandelion, versions of you didn't make it. They're gone, dead, erased from their timelines. You only know about the branches where you survived. So which you is real? All of them, and none of them. Because here's what identity means in a branching universe. You're not one person on one timeline. You're a branching structure through possibility space. Think of a tree growing. Start with a seed. It sprouts. A single trunk pushes upward. Then it branches. One limb grows left, another grows right. Then those branches split again and again. Thousands of branches, each following its own trajectory based on where sunlight fell, where wind pushed, where obstacles forced new directions. Now ask, which branch is the real tree? The question makes no sense. The tree isn't one branch. The tree is the entire structure. Trunk and branches together, spreading through three-dimensional space. Every branch is equally part of the tree. Every branch is equally real. You're not the branch. You're the tree. A branching structure spreading through possibility space instead of physical space. Every version of you is equally real, equally you, each one experiencing one coherent path through the branches that your life has taken since birth. The version of you reading this right now is one branch, one path through an incomprehensibly vast tree of versions that split from the same origin. The fertilized cell that became your body, and have been dividing ever since, at every quantum fork. Put simply, you're not a thing. You're a process, a pattern of consciousness branching through time. But here's what this means for survival, for the question that started this. You've already died infinite times. In branches you're not experiencing. Branches where the quantum events cascaded wrong, where the cosmic ray hit the wrong neuron, where the molecule misfired in your heart, where the card didn't break. Those versions are gone, dead, their threads of experience terminated. But you, the subjective experience, or being you, will never encounter your own ending, because ending means the cessation of subjective experience, and you only experience moments where experience continues. Actually, let me be more precise. Those versions aren't gone in the past. They're ending right now, in branches splitting away from this instant as you read these words. Some version of you just had an aneurysm. Another version's heart just stopped. Another just made a fractionally different movement and stepped into traffic. You're not experiencing those branches. You're experiencing this one, the one where your next thought arrives. Think back to that scientist with the quantum gun, pressing the trigger 1,000 times, experiencing 1,000 survivals in a row. From outside, observers see her die in half the branches at each trigger pull. They see her branching into thinner and thinner slices of probability space, fewer and fewer branches where she's still alive after 1,000 trials. But from inside, from her perspective, she experiences an unbroken chain of survival. Click, still alive. Click, still alive. Click, still alive. Click, still alive. An impossible winning streak that feels miraculous, but is simply the mathematical consequence of consciousness, only continuing where continuation happens. We're all in that experiment, right now, every moment. Every breath you take is survival in some branches, death in others. Every heartbeat that completes is a quantum coin flip that landed favorably in this branch. You only know about the favorable branches, because knowing requires being alive to know. When Einstein first encountered Everett's interpretation, he called it too extravagant. Schrödinger, the man who gave us the equation that describes quantum superposition, called it ridiculous. Too many worlds, too many versions, too much reality. But here's the thing. No one has found an error in the mathematics. The equations of quantum mechanics describe superposition. They describe branching. They describe all outcomes happening unless you add something extra, a mysterious collapse mechanism that appears nowhere in the math to make only one outcome real. Everett simply asked, what if we take the equations literally? What if we stop adding the collapse mechanism and just follow where the math leads? It leads here to you reading this in one branch of an incomprehensibly vast tree of versions, each experiencing their own path, most already terminated, all equally real. I can show you that the mathematics demands this. I cannot tell you why reality chose to be this strange. No one can. Not yet. Every version of you that made it to this moment, reading these words, breathing this breath, is the product of an impossibly fortunate chain of quantum events. Not because you were chosen, not because the universe favors you, because you're experiencing the only branch where you could be experiencing anything. The next time you cross a street, remember this. In some branch you won't make it. The quantum dice will land wrong. The driver's neuron will misfire. The car will be 2 feet further forward than it should be. But you'll never know. You'll never experience that branch. You only ever experience the branches where your next thought arrives, where the pattern of consciousness that is you continues for one more instant. In those other branches, the ones where you didn't make it, other people will experience your death. They'll grieve. They'll wonder what went wrong. They'll attend your funeral. From their perspective, you died. From yours, you simply continued. In this branch, the one where the car passed behind you, you have died. You will die. You are dying right now, in branches you cannot see. But you will never experience it. Only the continuation, not survival, not luck, just the mathematics of consciousness branching.